If you are a student who generally finds IELTS writing task 1 to be quite difficult, and you are one of those who cannot write a great report in your IELTS writing task 1, then this lecture is for you. Welcome everybody. This is your host Amarjot Singh, an IDP certified IELTS trainer. And today in this lecture, we are going to deep dive into IELTS writing task 1. And trust me, after watching this lecture, you won't feel that you can't write IELTS report writing. Let's get started. So first of all, we would like to start with let's start with the learning objectives of this lecture. In this lecture, we will learn how to apply the four-step analysis framework process to analyze your graphs and in order to pick some of the essential informations for your report writing. We will master some essential formations, some sentence formations, which I think will make it a cup of tea for you to write a report in IELTS writing. Then we will identify and describe some main features systematically in our report writing. After that, we will make some sophisticated comparisons between the structures that we will discuss. Then we will write one task, one uh, response. It will be a sample answer for you. I will teach you how to implement the strategies, how to implement the task formations that we will learn in this lecture, and also we will look at some common mistakes as well. So make sure that you are till the end in this lecture so that you can understand all of it and you can get the most out of it. Let's get started. Before moving ahead, let's start understanding the requirements of the task. So as you know that in case of task 1, we have 20 minutes to write it. So the time allocation part only allows you to have 20 minutes. Ideally, you should be only spending 20 minutes on writing task 1. The minimum word limit should be 150. However, I would say that you should aim for 160 to 180 words, considering the fact that basically, if you write only 160 to 180 words, then only you will be able to hit the mark of 150 words. Then there is a key instruction that I think that you all must be aware of. Whenever you see any task 1 in IELTS writing, you always have one line written below it, and it's called it's like summarize the data by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. We will deep dive into this key instruction. We will understand the importance of this key instruction, and we will also try to understand that how this key instruction is basically all that you need to score a band 8 or 9 in your IELTS writing task 1. Then we will, we have different graph types. We have bar graphs, line graphs, pie charts, tables, and combinations. The formations that we are going to discuss, the uh, techniques that we are going to discuss in this lecture, they will be not oriented to just one graph. You can use those strategies and formations for any type of graph that you are writing. So first of all, let's understand what are the key features. So, understanding the key features of a report is very, very important, especially if you are writing a task 1 in IELTS, where the key features are the ones that decide your score basically. Whenever you see any task 1 in front of you, especially in case of graphs where you need to write a report, you will always find that there is one line written behind it, like below it, and it's called it's like summarize the data by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So if you look closely at this key instruction that you will find in case of every writing task 1, you will see that in this particular instruction we are supposed to focus on three main elements of the report, and that is first thing is that we have to summarize the data. Now summarization and elaboration, they are two different aspects, they are two opposite aspects. In case of elaboration, you are supposed to elaborate something. You are supposed to discuss something in detail as you do in your writing task 2. However, if we talk about task 1, then instead of elaborating something, you are supposed to summarize it. Now when I say that you are supposed to summarize it, it means that you don't need to include all the details. You don't need to include all the figures, only we have to present the overall picture or the overview of the data. Second, we have to highlight the key features. Now, when you say that we have to highlight the key features, key features can be of different types. We will deep dive into that later on. So basically, you have to make sure that every single detail that is important for the data, that is important in the graph, is presented in your report writing. Third thing is that you have to make relevant comparisons. Now, the comparisons can be of different types. You can make conceptual comparisons, or you can make figurative comparisons, like you can compare the figures, or you can make some conceptual comparisons. We will look into that also later on. But the most important all of them is that how do you identify the key features. So let's discuss something about the key features that we have to discuss. When we talk about key features, so in key features, we can mention different aspects of the data. But according to me, there are three common elements that are available in every kind of data, that are available in every kind of uh, graph, whether it's bar, line, pie, anything. So those three common elements are that if you talk about key features, then I would say that the first thing that you should be focusing on is obviously the highest and lowest points, the maximum and minimum values in the data. But it doesn't matter whether your data is in percentage, whether your data is in a form of amount or number or any other form, you will always find some maximum or minimum values. So maximum and minimum values, the lowest and highest points are the most important key feature in your data. Second, after the highest and lowest points, you have trends. Now, the graphs can be of two different types. Either the graph can be a static graph where you have only a single timeline, for example, a single year, where the values are not changing. However, you can also have a dynamic chart, which basically means that you can have multiple timelines. You can have multiple years, 2 or more than 2 years. In dynamic charts, basically what happens that the figures, the values either increase or decrease, or they fluctuate. So these changes in the value of the data is called trend. And we have three different types of trends, where something is either increasing or decreasing, or something is fluctuating, like some value is fluctuating. So whenever you are focusing on the key features, you should always focus on trends as well. Okay, that what kind of trends this data is showing, especially in case of line graphs. Third thing, after the highest lowest points and the trends, the third element that I think can be considered as a key feature is basically the exceptions. Exceptions, for example, if there is any unusual pattern in the data, for example, in case of a line graph, if the values for all the categories are increasing, but there is only one category for which the value is decreasing, so that one specific category for which the value is decreasing only, it is an exception. So you can add that in your overview, in your overall, and mention it as a keyword, as a key feature, sorry. Remember, you don't have to describe every data point. You only have to focus on what's the most important thing in your data, right? That is that you have to summarize the data. If you want to analyze, if you want to, you know, analyze the graph carefully, and if you want to figure out what are the key features, right? So I would say that you should follow this four-step analysis framework that will help you out to easily understand the key features and report them in your report writing. The step number one is that you should always focus on the key features, for example, the maximum and minimum values. Step number two is that you focus on the trends, whether the figure is increasing, decreasing, or fluctuating. It's the most important part when it comes to dynamic charts, especially the line graphs. Step number three is exceptions. Basically, after the maximum minimum values and after figuring out the trends, you should always focus on the exceptions. Like, is there any unique value, or is there any unusual data points available? Then the fourth step is basically you can focus on the comparisons, that whether there are any figurative or conceptual comparisons. Figurative comparisons, like if something thing is double or three times or four times or half as compared to any other value, right? You can make a figurative comparisons as well over here. Now, as we have focused on this aspect that we have to focus on these three things, that we have to summarize the data, highlight key features, and make comparisons. If you are able to fulfill all these requirements, if you are able to summarize the data, highlight key features, and if you're able to make comparisons, then you're good to go. You can easily get a higher score in your IELTS writing task 1. Now, how to do that? So basically what I have done is I have created some essential sentence formations which I think can help you out to fulfill all these requirements. So we have 8 different types of sentence formations which will not only help you to add a variety of sentences in your writing, but also they will help you to fulfill all the three essential requirements of the task 1. That is, they will help you to summarize the data, make comparisons, and highlight key features. So let's get started. The first formation among all the 8 formations that I would like to discuss first is something called highest lowest formation. In this formation, what we do is basically we show a contrast between the highest point and the lowest point in the data. So what you do, you make a complex sentence by mentioning the highest point in the data, then you uh, join it together with the lowest point. However, using a contrary connector like however. So it goes like that x was the highest, which was let's say 80%, 90% or whatever the value is. Then you use semicolon, then you use however, comma to show the contrast, and then you say in the case of y, which is another category, the value was just this much. So it goes like, for example, the worth of apples sold was the highest, which was $40 million. However, in the case of kiwis, it was just 7 million. So let's say that if there is a data about the sales of different fruits and the highest value is for apples, let's say, and the lowest figure is for kiwis, then we can basically show a contrast, compare these two figures using this value, using this formation. So example number 2 would be like, for example, instead of uh, apples, let's say that if the data is about students, and instead of dollars, if the data is in form of percentage, then we can use the highest lowest formation in this way, like the percentage of students who opted science was the highest, which was 66%. However, in the case of maths, it was just 10%. So here, as you can notice one thing, that although we have different types of data sets, although we are describing different types of data, on one side we have data in form of dollars, currency, and we have different subjects over here. On the other hand, we have data in form of percentage. So doesn't matter what kind of data you are elaborating, what kind of data you are reporting. You can use all these formations in a similar way. The structure, the basic structure will be same. The only changes that you would have to make is the changes in the subject, verb, and the changes in the uh, basically the data values, nothing else. Now, what is the purpose of this formation? As you must have identified that the purpose of this value of this formation is basically to identify the maximum and minimum values, which are the key features, and it also shows a strong contrast between the extreme points, like the highest point and the lowest point, which is a kind of comparison. So basically, what it does, this formation basically it helps you to make comparison, as well as it helps you to mention the key features. So it is fulfilling two different purposes that we discussed before. Now, how you can use it? Basically, you can use it in different graphs. You can use it in your bar graph for making comparisons between the highest lowest categories. Then you can use line graphs in to compare the peaks, and in pie charts and tables also the highest lowest formation can be used to show a contrast and compare the highest and lowest values. And let's move ahead. Let's go to the next formation, that is called the followed by formation. Now, when we talk about the followed by formation, I generally use either highest lowest formation or followed by formation to start my report writing. Whenever I'm writing the body paragraph 1, then in that case the first sentence that I write is either the highest lowest formation or the followed by formation. Now, how to choose between these two? Basically, it depends on the amount of the data that you have. If there is a lot of data, so we need something that would help us to cover multiple values in a very in as less words as possible. So in the highest lowest formation, what happened was that we were only comparing the highest and lowest points, so we were only able to cover two different values. However, in the case of followed by, we can cover up to five values within just one sentence. So followed by is basically a listing formation where you are listing things out, making a list of something. The first half of the sentence is as same as the highest lowest formation, which is basically we are presenting the highest value, which is like x was the highest value, comma. Then we write followed by now the second highest, which was y, with value z with this value and w with this value. So it goes like the percentage of students who opted science was the highest, which was 66%. Now pay attention here that this is as same as the first formation, the highest lowest formation, where we reported the highest point. Now after this, the second half will change. So this is the highest, the number, the percentage of students who opted science was the highest, which was 66%. Followed by, now this figure of 66% was followed by those who chose SST with 33%, literature with 25%, and maths with just 10%. So here what is happening is that basically you are mentioning the highest point, then you are making a list of the all the values that are following it, like the second highest, third highest, and so on and so on. This will help you out to mention different figures, like multiple figures in very less words. So basically what it is doing is that the purpose of this formation is to summarize the data and show the ranking. So it will help you out to summarize the data and also to present a list in form of ranking, right? Again, it can be used in different graphs, okay, to show the rankings of all the categories. And you should use it whenever you have a lot of data, when you want to present uh, different data points in a very short form, in a very small sentence, right? Okay, so let's move ahead. So then we will talk about the formation number 3. After highest lowest formation and followed by formation, I generally prefer to use this formation. This is called respectively. Respectively formation can also be used to make a list, like we did in case of followed by. It can also be used for listing. However, I use it to make some kind of chronological comparisons. How I do that, basically, I would like to show you that. For example, let's say if we remember the first formation, in the first formation we were mentioning the highest and lowest points, right? That the highest was for uh, let's say science, and which was 66%, whereas the lowest point was for maths, which was 10%. Now if I want to take it further, so I can do something like this, that over the next decade, over the next decade the figures for both these subjects, now both these subjects, which let's say if we are writing highest lowest formation beforehand, and after highest lowest formation if we are writing the respectively at after that, so both these subjects would be basically maths and science only. Science was the highest one, maths is the lowest one. So you know both these subjects means science and maths in this context. So over the next decade, the figures for both these sentences, both these subjects increased and reached at 70% and 15% respectively. Now, in this case, what we are doing is 70% is for the first and 15% is for the second one, which is basically means that 70% for the science and 15% for maths. So this formation can be used after highest lowest formation as a second sentence, where you can mention the parallel comparisons, and Also you can make a listing if you want, like you can cover multiple figures, like the figure for subject A, B and C was 30%, 40%, 50% respectively, etc. You can also do something like that, but I prefer to use it like this. Okay, it will make a connection with the first sentence, and also it will help you to make parallel comparisons. So the purpose of this formation is basically to show parallel changes, and also it helps you to make comparisons between the initial values and the next values. So compare two items simultaneously if you want to compare them, and if you want to show multiple changes together, you can use it. Now let's go to this formation number 4, which is called the former and latter formation. Now in respectively formation, what happened was that we used respectively to show parallel changes. Parallel changes means when both the changes or all of the changes that you're mentioning are of the same type. For example, if all the values are increasing or if all the values are decreasing. So in this case, for example, uh, both the values were increasing, right? That both the values increased and reached at 70% and 15%. And if instead of increasing these values would have been decreasing, then we would have written that the value for the figure for both these subjects decreased and reached at some values, some other values, right? So if the changes are parallel, if the changes are of the same type, either increasing or decreasing, right, then we can use it. However, if one value is increasing and the other one is decreasing, in that case, if the changes are not parallel, if they are not simultaneous, then we cannot use it. So for that purpose, we have something else called the former and latter formation. Now when I say former and latter formation, basically what we do is basically former and latter formation is used when you don't want to repeat the subject again and again. You don't want to mention like students, people, or whatever the main subject in the sentence is. So it helps you out to uh, avoid the repetition of the sentence, and it also helps you out to know show contrast also. So let's see. So the formation goes like, while the figure for the former item which you mentioned before uh, changed, for the latter one it changed. So the changes here would be of opposite type. For example, over the next decade, okay, instead of respectively I'm saying, over the next decade, while the figure for the former subject decreased to 60%, okay, so in this case, pay attention closely, it decreased to 60%, but for the latter one, it increased by 5% or to 15%. Now, when we say by means we have to mention the difference. For example, if something is increasing from 10 to 15%, so there is a difference of 5%. So if we write by, we will write 5%. But if we want to write the complete value at the end value, then we can say to 15%. Right. So here in this case, one figure is increasing and one figure is decreasing, and there is a total contrast. For that purpose, you can use former and latter formation, unlike respectively where both the changes are parallel, right? And this formation also I use after using the highest lowest formation. For example, when I mentioned that the percentage of students who opted science was the highest, which was 66%, whereas the number of student the value for the figure for maths was 10%. So after the highest lowest formation, when we talked about that, then we can use either respectively or former latter. If both the changes for both the categories are parallel of the same type, both are increasing or decreasing, then we can use respectively. However, if there is a like contrast, if one is increasing and one is decreasing, then we can use something like this. So the purpose of this is to create an elegant comparison between the two figures, and it also highlights the opposite trends or contrasting patterns. It helps you to demonstrate advanced grammatical range, and you can use it in different graphs to show comparison between two different categories and show contrast as well. Former and lateral formation can also be used with another formation which is called the difference formation. Now, in this difference formation, what happens that we uh, talk about the difference between two different categories, specific difference. It goes like, that a significant difference of 10%. let's say, let's say, take an example that a significant difference of 10% was noticed in the percentage of people studying SST and literature. So basically, what we are trying to say here is that uh, a huge difference of 10% was there in the percentage of students who were studying SST and literature. So, in the percentage of students who were studying SST and literature, there was a difference of 10%. Now, we are not writing the exact figures here, we are just mentioning that there was a difference of 10% in the percentage of students who were studying SST and in the percentage of students who were studying literature. But 10% difference can be between 10 and 20, between 20 and 30, between 20 and 30 and 20 and 10 as well, 40 and 50 as well. So, what is the exact figure? To mention that, we can say that to be precise, you can add that phrase. To be precise, it basically, it means, sorry, just 1 second. Okay, to be precise, okay, if we want to mention the exact figures, we can say it means the percentage was 35% for the former subject, the first one, and 25% for the latter one, which is the second one. So here in this case, as you can notice here, that the first subject we talked about was SST and the second one was literature. So 35% is for SST and 25% is for literature. So in this case, what we are doing is we are not repeating the subjects, we are avoiding repetition of subjects, and we also are taking it further, complementing difference formation with the former and latter formation. So former and latter formation can also be used with difference formation in this case. How like it works, like what is the purpose of this is basically to highlight key features plus make precise comparisons. You can use it to emphasize significant gaps between data points, and also you can use it to provide exact numerical differences between two categories. Okay, it basically helps you to show the mathematical relationship, a kind of comparison you can say. Then the next formation is very simple, it's called similar, basically similar formation. When you want to show a similarity between two figures, you can, you know, almost similar or about similar. So you can just show that, like say that interestingly, both countries showed a similar spending pattern on education with figures of 15% and 16% respectively. So it's like, you know, it's almost similar, or it can be exactly similar as well. So you should always focus on the similar trends as well. A similarity basically is a kind of unique data point, so it can be considered as an exception, because finding a similar value in data points in the whole data is something that is very unusual. Seventh one. In the seventh one, it's called double and half formation. I call it double and half. It basically helps you to directly compare the figurative values of the categories in the data. For example, you can say that the sale doubled from 20 million to 40 million over the period, or you can say the figure for country A was three times higher than country B, or the consumption halved between 2015 and 2020. So when you take a data point and then you compare it with the another category, like it is double, it is three times, four times, five times, something like that, then you can use this formation, right? And it helps you to make comparisons, right? Obviously, which is one of the three major what you can say needs or requirements. Summarize the data, mention key features, and make comparisons. These are the three main requirements, and we are fulfilling the comparison part by using the formation here. It helps you to show the precise mathematical relationship. It demonstrates the numerical analysis skills, and also it helps you to create a strong impact on the proportional statements as well. In line graph, you can use it to compare the starting and ending points in different lines. You can compare the categories with clear ratios in bar graph. And you can also compare the segments with proportional relationships as well in pie charts or any other kind of graph. The last formation that I would like to discuss is something called the range formation. Now, as I told you that you have to do three things. You have to summarize the data, you have to mention the key features, and you have to basically make comparisons. So what happens that sometimes the data is huge, right? The data set is huge and you have a lot of data points. And let's say that if you have a lot of data points and you have already mentioned the highest lowest points, you have already made comparisons, make a figurative comparisons like double and half and all, and you have already mentioned the similar points. You have already used other formations like respectively, formal letter, and all the others, and you have some data points left which are neither the maximum and minimum points, nor do they have any kind of relationship with each other, like they are not double, half, or three times or four times of each other. So you have some kind of data sets which are insignificant. So if you have some kind of values left at the end which are not as important as the other points are, so what you can do is that instead of avoiding them, instead of skipping them altogether, you can use the range formation, where we mention the lowest and the highest data range for all the categories. For example, we can do something like this. Okay, finally, the figure for healthcare and clothing was far lower than the other categories, ranging between 2% and 8%, which means that the figure for healthcare and clothing was neither lower than 2% nor it was more than 8%. So it was always between 2% and 8%. So in this case, as you can see over here, that what is happening here is that basically we are making kind of we are summarizing the data, okay, and we are not mentioning each and every value. We are just mentioning uh, the lowest point and the highest point, that's all. So the value for healthcare and clothing is going to be in between 2 and 8%, right? So you can uh, effectively deal with all the insignificant figures using this formation. All right, so let's discuss the role of each formation. As I told you before, that each of these formations basically have a role to play. You have three main requirements that you have to fulfill. The first requirement that you have to fulfill is basically to summarize the data, then you have to highlight the key features, and then you have to make relevant comparisons. These were the three main requirements that were mentioned uh, in the line that we saw, right? So the formation number 2 followed by formation number 8 range, and formation number 6 similarity. They are summarizing the data, highlighting key features. For highlighting key features, we are using highest and lowest formation. Formation number 1, where we are focusing on the highest and lowest points. We are using formation number 5, use the difference formation, and formation number 7 is being used, the double and half one is being used to make to highlight features as well. It is also kind of uh, formation that helps us to make relevant comparisons. So for comparison, we are using respectively formation number 3, formation number 4, formal and latter, formation number 6, which is similar, and the 7, the double and half. So each and every formation that we are using is basically, what it is doing is that it is helping you to uh, you know it is helping you to fulfill a requirement that is set by the examiner before. So each formation serves multiple purposes. Master all of them and you will be able to tackle any kind of graph that is there. Now let's go and let's try to apply all these sentence formation that we have learned to write a report for this graph. So in this graph, you can see it says that the bar graph below shows the share of expenditure for five main categories in the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, and Japan in 2009. So we have different services, and we have different what we can say, goods and services on which we are spending money. So the data is in form of percentage, and the percentage is of expenditure, or it can be written as the percentage of money, right? Okay, so in this case, if we want to write the introduction, so introduction is very simple, as you know, that we have to just say rephrase. So we will say that the given bar graph compares the proportion of money spent on different goods and services in four different nations in 2009, right? We can write something like this, right? Then we have to write the overall. So if for overall, if we look closely over here, we can easily figure it out that most of the all the countries, United States, Canada, United UK, and Japan, they are spending most of their money on housing, right? Whereas the spending on healthcare and clothing is very less as compared to the other categories. So it's far lower than other categories. So what we can do is basically we can use it for the overall. We can write like overall, it is clear that housing received the largest share of expenditure in all the countries. However, in the case of healthcare and clothing, the spending was far lower as compared to all the other categories that are given. So we are using however to show the contrast. Here it is the highest one, but here the figures are lower as compared to the other ones. So it is the main overall that we have picked from here. You can mention you can try to figure out other main features from this, and you can try to mention that, but I think that it is a good point to mention, so we can just mention this, right? Now we need to like now we need to see that you know how we can write the body paragraphs. So we will be using all the 8 formations to write this body paragraph 1 and 2. So if we look closely, you can see that what we can start with is basically we can start with housing. So I would like to start with housing. I would like to start with the highest point. Then we can use followed by formation to mention all the other figures. For example, in this case we can write okay, to begin with, the percentage of money spent on housing was the highest, right? In United States, which was about 25%. Followed by, now we are using the followed by formation over here. Followed by United Kingdom with 24%, the second highest. Japan 21%, the third highest, and the Canada with the lowest figure among all these, which is 20%. So here we are using the formation number 2, which is followed by formation in this case, right? So we just mentioned the values for housing using followed by. Now this is done, right? Now next what we can do is, then we say okay, besides that 20% of its total expenditure 20% of its total spending was on food by UK. So UK is spending 20% of its almost money on food, right? Which was slightly less as compared to the figure for Japan. Okay, which is slightly less as compared to Japan. So in case of food, as you can see that the figure for UK is 20%, which is slightly less than Japan here. But in case of transportation, the opposite is true. In this case, in food, Japan is more, the figure for Japan is more, the higher, but the figure for United Kingdom UK is lower. But in this case, transportation, the opposite is true. The figure for Japan is lower and UK is higher. So it's totally opposite. So here we can use the former and latter formation. So we can say okay, in the case of transportation, however, the opposite was true, as the expenditure was 15% in the former nation and 10% in the latter one. So here we are using former and latter. So in this case, as you can see, former means the first one. So in the last sentence, the first country that we mentioned was UK. So in this case, the former one is basically UK. So 15% is for UK, whereas the latter one is 10%, which is basically the second country, which is Japan in this case. So here we are using former and latter formation, the formation number 4, to write the next sentence, right? Then after that, as you can see, I am writing the difference formation for another data set for comparing USA and Canada in case of transportation only. Interestingly, there was a difference between the percentage of spending on food and transportation, and it was exactly the same in both the countries, USA and Canada. In both the countries, USA and Canada, there was a difference of 2% in the percentage of money spent on transportation. That's all. So here we are done with food, we are done with housing, we are done with transportation, but only healthcare and clothing are done, are remaining. Sorry. So as you can see that these figures are very insignificant, right? We don't have like any kind of, we cannot make any kind of significant comparisons. So what we will do is, we will, instead of skipping them, we will use formation range over here. So we will say finally the figures for healthcare and clothing was far lower than other categories, ranging between 2% and 8%. Now when I say ranging between 2% and 8%, it means that neither the figure was lower than 2%. See, 2% is the lowest point over here and 8% is the highest point over here. So the figure for both these categories was always between 2 and 8. Okay, never lower than 2, no more than 8. So we are just mentioning the highest and lowest formation, sorry, the highest and lowest point, and we are using it as a range. So we are done with this, right? Clear? What you can do is that you can go through this again. I will provide you this PDF to you in the description of this video, right? So this is another advanced vocabulary that you can use for describing different data points. Like for highest and lowest points, you can use like peak dat, reach dat, its maximum, dominated. Lowest, for lowest you can say hit its minimum, bottomed out, etc, etc. I would suggest you to go through this PDF after watching this video, so that you can learn all this vocabulary and use it in your task reports. So common mistakes that we have to avoid are basically that we have to make sure that all the formations are correctly mentioned. There's no, you know, error in the formation. For example, you don't have you should not write that the graph shows that housing was 20%. In this case, that is unnecessary, so you can just mention that housing accounted for 25% of expenditure. So make sure that there is no error in the formations. Second thing is, you should make sure that the data description is right. You should avoid describing every single data point. You don't have to describe every single data point. You can just mention the main points. You have to provide summary. Basically, you should not miss the overall statement. You should not stop making comparisons. You should not avoid adding opinions, like you should not add opinions or explanations why the data increased or decreased. It's none of our business. Language error are repetitive sentence structures. You should not write same sentence over and over, which I think you won't after implementing all the 8 formations that we discussed. You should not mention inaccurate data figures. You should not mix up categories. You should not fumble up, and you should not do poor paragraphing as well. So this is the particular structure that you can go through, okay, after this video. All this is in the description, right? This is the practice checklist, what you should do before writing, while writing, and after writing. I would like to go through this. It's a kind of homework for you. I will provide all this, the whole PDF in the description of this video. So what you can do is that basically you can go through the description and you can, check this out. It will be a homework for you, right? All this. If you want more guidance for your IELTS preparation, you can contact us on different platforms. You can visit our website at www.ieltsutra.com. You can contact us at the given number. You can email us at contact@ieltsutra.com, or you can follow us on Instagram as well at ieltsutra on Instagram. For regular classes, you can DM us at the given number 83608532447. For free resources and preparation and free masterclass, you can join our WhatsApp group. The link will be provided in the description of this video. Always remember that repetition is very important. You have to make sure that you are repeating all the formations again and again that we discussed. Master all the 8 formations that we discussed. Follow a systematic approach, and you will be able to achieve 7+ bands in your score. If you find this video useful, then I would highly request you to please like this video, subscribe the channel for more such videos, and also don't forget us to follow on Instagram and join the free WhatsApp community group as well. For regular classes, you can contact me on the given number. Till the next video, I would like to say that please stay connected, keep hustling, keep learning. Till then, see you. This is your host Amarjot Singh. I hope this video was useful to you. If not, then do give it another round. Watch it once again so that you can learn each and every concept. Thank you very much. See you in the next video.